Hello, everyone. Hello, and good afternoon, because it's very early afternoon, after 12. Hello, Dimitris. Hello, Magnus.
Hello.
I have this great opportunity to be in fARAD, and we are having our traditional Salon Insula 42, which is an online discussion about cinema. This year, the documentary series that Dimitris Kerkinos is curating has as a theme investigation. And Magnus Gertten, who's the second time together with us in fARAD, is also presenting a film, NELLY and NADINE, a very, very strong, intense, and troublesome story, a love story. A sad love story, and at the same time investigative love story, but a peculiar kind of investigative. And I'm going to start immediately to ask you questions, because we just come back from the laboratory session, because fARAD has also a lab for young documentarists. And my question is not going to be at the beginning about the festival, but about the laboratory, Magnus and Dimitris. Hearing the fact that, hearing the way in which we gave feedback to these young filmmakers, I was asking myself that how do you think, and out of your experience, Magnus as a film director and Dimitris as a curator, what do you think is the most useful for a young documentarist to hear during a feedback? How do you see this kind of experience for a young documentary filmmaker? I'll start maybe with Magnus, Dimitris, if you agree.
Absolutely. No, I think it's
Yeah,
a very
course.
important process that you are, you need to be open up to feedback. I think that's so important. And that's what I do in every film. I do. And as a team, we do a lot of feedback sessions. And it's sometimes we do it in a quite early stage. And that is what these, the lab participants are doing today as well. And it could be quite painful, because you already know that you will get a lot of views. You might even get criticism. But it's so important to do it, because you cannot protect your film like a newborn baby and hold it close to you, and you don't want anyone to touch it. You have to open up, and I think the participants are doing that in a very good way, because it's quite tough, and and they will get views that are quite contradictory. And they have to sort it out. They have to pick out the best of what they get, and what reflects their idea about the film. And they just have to be super open to pick out the best of what we are saying and the other people are saying. But my main point is, this process is so necessary.
And Magnus, do you think that it's different from giving feedback to a fictional film or a documentary? Do you think it's more important for a documentary than a fiction film? Do you think it's different? It's a different kind of feedback?
I think it could be, because fiction, you usually have like a very clear script, or you have like a very clear vision for your film. When it comes to documentary, sometimes you're actually trying to write the script about what is your film going to be. And that is what the editing is about, that you are actually writing a script. And so it's very much about what is your focus, what is your main vision for your film, because you are so much in a searching process when you are working with a documentary. I think that's quite a big difference. And I think it's probably you need it more in documentaries. You need to talk to people, but there's always a risk of being, coached too much. All the coaching will kill you in a way, because you get so many views from so many people. So you can't do too many times, and you need
So-
to find out who is the person I want to listen to most. You need to find your favorite, and then go with that person.
Basically, what you're saying is that one that gets the feedback has to be both open and closed in a certain way, because you have to be open to everything at the same time to focus yourself on whatever you consider it's useful for your own needs.
Exactly, that's how we do it. And when we do with my films, when we do our feedback sessions, we invite people. We invite it could be like people who have never seen anything. It could be our colleagues. It could be narrative consultants and so on. So we try to create a mix. And we, at some point, we know what they will say. They will only look for the flaws. They will not be too positive with things. And so you just have, but you also, when you come into a session, you are already in the process of thinking about some problems that you have with your film. So that's what you're searching for. You're listening to people that are addressing those issues that you have, and you already know that you have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you will listen for.
Mm-hmm. Dimitris, what was said today, and also what Magnus says, makes me wonder, beyond the question I already asked, if you think that a curator would give a different kind of feedback than a director himself. Do you think there is a difference in the way in which a film curator, a person passionate about film like you are, and very specialized in curating and selecting film, is there a difference in the way that you give feedback, for example, for this kind of exercise, as compared to a documentary film director or a film director generally?
Well, I think the objective is the same. You know, I mean, you want to see an interesting film, you want to see a film to work, you want to give solutions according to your taste and your opinion. And yes, that's what's important, you know, and it's a process that it's helpful not only for, you know, the director, you know, who has the project, but also for, you know, the mentors or the curators or the directors, you know, because you're learning things, you know, you get opinions from directors, let's say, how to approach a story, you know, approaches that you haven't thought about, you know. So it's you know, it's a necessary process, I think, and it's very interesting for a curator as well.
And
No.
for both of you, just to end this discussion about giving feedback for the laboratory, for the fARAD laboratory, let me ask you this question: was it ever like you saw an exercise, a proposal that was really bad? I mean, really bad, that doesn't show talent. And how do you react on that? How do you react when you see that someone really thinks he can be a director, and however, whatever what he shows is just very weak in quality from all points of view? Did it ever happen to you? And if it did, how did you react? How did you react, Dimitris?
Well, I mean, you can learn a lot of things, you know, from weak projects, let's say, or from weak ideas, you know, and sometimes it's, I mean, it's easier to give advice, or it's easier to, you know, like to see the mistakes and try, you know, to be helpful, you know, by pinpointing, you know, the weaknesses or the mistakes, or, and I think there's potential in everything. It's just a matter of angle. It's a matter of how you manipulate, you know, the material. So, you know, as long as, you know, like, you know, the person who has the project, you know, is open, you know, to do changes, and he wants to listen, and he wants to do something with it, I think, you can be helpful, and you can make a weak project stronger, by pinpointing, like the potential that it might have, I mean, there are a lot of times, that you have projects that are like, about things that have been said before, or things that we've seen before. And then there is a challenge, to see how you can make it more interesting, and, so, even in these cases, I think that you can be helpful, and you can
do something with it.
Exactly, yes.
Magnus?
I mean, to the degree that, depending on the project, because, I don't know, sometimes, you can't do much, but nevertheless, you can always better things, you can always
try.
I would say that there's, it's rarely that I meet people that are lacking talent in that sense, and especially not in the lab we are in. I mean, this is talented people, people who have been working with film for a while, and I think all the three projects also has quite interesting starting points, and there is a core of something that is very moving and that really attracts me. So it's all about how to tell the story. And it's tough to do a documentary film. I mean, I've been doing 15 films or something, and I've been in this business for a while. And sometimes I think that my next film, because I've been doing quite a few films, I think my next film, that will be an easy one. Finally, now I know how to do it. It will be easy, but it's never easy. It's so tough, and every film is a new challenge. And you are in the process of doing a film, you are always, at some point, you are coming to, you have your crisis. You feel this is not going to be good. This is going to be the end of my career. People will hate it. You will always come to that point in a film. So it's tough. And sometimes when we've been doing a film, the film I'm having here, it was such a struggle. But when you suddenly you're finishing the editing, you just inhale and you look at the editor and you say, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. How did we do it? And so that's what the participants in the lab are facing as well. And they are, there's a lot of talent there, but and that's what I'm trying to say. It's so much about choosing. It's about finding your focus. Don't try to fill your film with everything. You need to find that specific idea of this is the film, and you need to find the moments. I need to. That's what I'm looking for. We had this discussion about structure and so on, and at some point you need to work a lot with structure. But to me, it's finding the defining moments in your film, the little scene where you can see it's like a miniature of the full film. That's what I'm looking for, because if I can find that scene, then I know there's a film. But if I would just start with a structure, I don't know if I have a film. That's what. But it's a different process, of course, with every film. But I'm especially looking for that, the defining emotional big moment where something is at stake, because that is something that you need in every film. What is at stake?
Well, indeed, in this kind of line of thinking, I have this question, Dimitris, for you. We were discussing about it a lot also during our last editions of fARAD. But of course, it's a question for both of you, but I'll start with Dimitris. In recent years, documentary has become a very important line of filmmaking. And why do you think it's that in the last 5 years, documentary became such an important domain and much more consumed by spectators and having broader audiences and being interesting and becoming such a looked for art form?
Well, it's a very dynamic genre, you know. You can find a lot, you know, it's very creative, you know. I mean, it's, I mean, we have reached a point that we can watch a film and not knowing whether it's a documentary or a fiction, you know. And that's very nice, you know. It just breaks, you know, the limits of the genres and everything. And I think that comes from documentary more than from fiction, you know. Or fiction uses, you know, documentary ways or narration in a way, you know. So it's a very creative genre. And aesthetically, you know, I mean, it absorbs, you know, I mean, lately we've seen that there's a lot of, I mean, you know, we see the use of animation, a lot of animation, that it's a way of a solution, you know, finding solution through the animation. And we see a lot of like narrative elements, you know, from all over, you know, that are absorbed, you know, in documentary. And at the same time, you know, I mean, we're living times that, you know, television is not functioning the way that we're supposed to function. I mean, there's a lot of propaganda. There's a lot of fake news. There's a lot of, I mean, people don't trust, you know, the news and all, you know, the information we're getting. So documentary somehow, you know, does this job, you know, like it shows things, you know, in a more, you know, I mean, it digs things, you know, and it presents things, you know, in a more, let's say, objective. I mean, objective. I don't know if it's the right word, but it shows things that, you know, and it touches upon themes, you know, that you won't see elsewhere. And people have this need to be informed about what's happening in a different way and get deeper into, you know, this kind of subjects, you know, like, you know, things that have to do with politics, with environment, with everything that is happening in our lives. And documentary is not, it's not anymore like it used to be, like, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, about animals or about, you know, just portraits of artists, or, you know, it's you know, a very wide, you know, genre, you know, it can include everything and can touch upon this, you know, in a very creative and essential way. And I think people need that, you know. I think, you know, it works in a lot of ways, you know, for the good of the people, you know.
And you as a programmer, Dimitris, how do you, what becomes for you now challenging? Because you did programming for a long time, and programming documentaries, selecting them, what is today the most challenging thing that happens to you as a programmer as compared to years ago in terms of programming, how you program, how you select? Is there a change? Do you feel it, that something changed in the way you program? Do you feel that other challenges are ahead in relation to this?
Well, you have a greater production in terms of numbers, of quantity. So you watch more stuff, and you know, that, I mean, that's very good that, you know, there is greater quantity, but at the same time, you know, it becomes more difficult, you know, to be able to choose, you know, and to find, you know, works that are more significant or more creative, or, and so, I mean, you watch more. That's a major change. And you have more demands, you're more demanding because, there is like a development and this growth, and you've seen more stuff, and there are more issues, and, you are just, trying to find, the best examples of a theme or of an approach or whatever. And yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, it's more demanding, I would say,
Mhm.
it's more demanding.
Mhm. And Magnus, what do you think about this importance of documentary in terms of the changes that happened in the last 10 years and this kind of spread of interest for documentary, as well as what are the challenging, let's say, aspects of making a documentary today?
Mm. But well, first, I would like to say that documentary is so many things. It's like saying book. You have to know what kind of book it is. And I think that's very interesting that we have this variety of different kinds of documentaries. And we still have those animal documentaries that Dimitris is talking about. And we also have, of course, the journalistic tradition of making documentaries in a specific way. Quite often the more political documentaries. I'm more into the kind of documentaries that are very inspired by fiction storytelling, and I mean that is the classic way of telling a story, where you really need to answer some of those classical narrative questions, which is what is the dilemma, the drama, the what's at stake in the film, and so on. So to me, a good documentary is something very different from what you see on social media, what you see in the more simple documentaries. It's because what we're trying to do, as Dimitris is saying, we're trying to go deep into things. We are looking for the nuances. We are looking for the contradictions in life. When you meet a person, we realize that he or she could say something in the beginning of the film, and suddenly after half an hour in the film, he will or she will completely contradict him or herself. I mean, that's how we are as human beings. And that is so interesting. And we also work with a timeline. And because when you do a reportage, it's just a story about the present. This is how things are right now. But we are working with a time scale, which means that we have a starting point, and then we have a midpoint, and then we have an ending point. Things are changing. I mean, you would see this happy guy with long hair. He's in love with a beautiful woman or whatever. But in the middle of the film, he's cut his hair and he's lonely and he lost his job, and then he comes back at the end of the film. We are following a process, and that's so interesting. And we are in a world of simplified stories, because that's what we have now. Right-wing stories, fake news, and so on. We are trying to tell stories about how complicated life is, how complicated the truth of society and politics and so on are. That's our message, and it's quite a complicated message to have, that nothing is as simple as you think it is. But I think it's our mission. That's what our contribution to the world. That you need to go deep in order to understand.
Right. So basically, what you're saying is that in a way, this expansion of documentary, what both of you are saying is that this way of expanding the interest for documentary reflects also deepening of interest in terms of, okay, but where the truth really lies, because truth is always paradoxical and it's always challenging and it's always a matter of interpretation and a matter of personal mirroring the world that is around us. Now, I'm going to come back to the edition, the 9th edition of fARAD, and discuss a little bit both about your film, Magnus, but also about programming. A lot of the journalists who asked me questions about this edition, Dimitris, were asking me, okay, but what is it? Investigative documentary. What does this mean to do documentary of investigation? So I would like to ask you, how did you see the alchemy this year in terms of selection? What did you bring in, considering its documentary of investigation? Because I find a lot of complementarity and diversity in the way that you chose the 11 films that finally are presented in Arad, and 2 of them in Timișoara, but of course 10 of them you have chosen really yourself, so it was your selection and your proposal. What is for you the documentary of investigation? What was the criteria you chose these films?
Well, as you said, I wanted to have diversity, to show the different aspects, of investigation, and also, the different themes, investigation. I mean, we have personal stories, social stories, political stories, are seen through an investigation, And I think diversity is always important, to show, different aspects, of one thing, And for me, investigation is research. It's something that it happens in my daily life, in my work, in everything. You always do research, you always investigate. And it's a very exciting, thing to do, very interesting, and it's connected to searching for the truth, for searching for understanding, and these are aspects that are very important to me, and also for the audience to explore through the films. So, investigation in a way, is like, is identified with documentary, I mean, when you do a documentary, let's say you investigate something, and you have to find the right way to approach it. So, it was very exciting, to watch different kind of films and try to put all of them together so that you can offer like, how can I say, like in a kaleidoscopic way, what investigation can mean in a lot of levels, in a social, personal, political level. And I think that was, the idea behind the selection of the films this year, trying to have a bit of everything, and through films that they did it in a very creative and meaningful way. So I think if someone watches the whole program, has a very good idea, of, what investigative document, for on a personal or a social level.
And you do have the programming this year has this kind of polarity on the line of what you are saying, the polarity between a film like Searching for Sugar Man, a film that makes you feel kind of, okay, everything can happen in life, everything miraculous can happen in life, everything can be great, and finally unbelievable things can happen. And then a film like Depth 2, and you were discussing yesterday about Depth 2 and the interesting modalities from a stylistic point of view and aesthetic point of view, that this film, that's a very, very troubling film and a very, in a way, brutal film, because one has to accept to look into a truth that is hard to accept. What can you, what, for example, choosing this kind of film like that too, what is for you as a programmer most interesting about this this kind of film?
Well, I mean, of course, the theme is very important. I mean, it's a film that it's very brave politically, but at the same time, it's innovative aesthetically. Of course, I mean, maybe you have seen, you know, like similar approaches, but it's very stimulating for me as a programmer, you know, to see and to show, you know, the solutions that directors find, you know, to narrate a story, you know. And I think the combination of these two elements, you know, make the film very, very interesting and important. I mean, you know, the bravery, the political bravery, you know, touching such a difficult subject, and at the same this combination of two things, you know.
But yeah, because we have maybe to tell those of here to look at us for the moment, it's a film about the hidden story during the NATO bombing of in former Yugoslavia, about the hidden common graves and crimes, war crimes that were hidden to the public and are still, let's say, not accepted by Serbs in terms of what happened during that that period. I mean, it's a very, very provocative and very troublesome historical moment that is described in the films. And also, I think I believe that in the context of the war in Ukraine, this is a very, very present moment, important film, challenging us with the idea that whatever can happen, and then we are all accomplices. A lot of people can be accomplices in doing terrible things still, even if we believe that we are living here in Europe such a lean and correct and ethical life. I mean, this I believe it's important. And how did you discover the film, Dimitris?
Well, it's an older film, you know, and I had seen it in Berlinale when it was screened, actually, and you know, I was quite impressed. And you know, we screened it in Thessaloniki, you know, like a month later, and it has stayed with me, you know. I mean, it's a film that I liked very much, you know, and I thought that now it fits, you know, it gives a different dimension of investigation.
And from your Q&A session that was yesterday, because the film was screened yesterday, and we have a very nice photo with people staying still with Onyej, with the director who was here for the Q&A session, and they stayed outside the cinema still asking him questions. What do you think it's the most interesting questions that, for example, was asked today? What kind of curiosity did the film bring up for the people who looked at it yesterday?
I don't know if I can answer that question, actually. Well, I think what is important about this film is that it troubles you and it stays with you and it makes you question yourself, and so somehow it just takes you in the film, and it makes you consider, you know, like as you said, you know, like now there's a war in Ukraine, you know, you can think your position, I mean, I don't know, I'm always, when a film touches me, I try to put myself in the shoes of the people who are part of the story I've watched and everything. So, it creates feelings, troublesome feelings, but nevertheless, feelings and emotions, that they make you look inside yourself, and just question what you show, and how would you react, or what would you do, or whatever. So I think it's it makes you work things out with yourself. Sorry, not now, please. Not now. Not now, later. Later on, in half an hour, please. Sorry, just room service.
The cleaning lady, because we are all in the same hotel. This we can see from the decoration behind us.
So, I don't know. That's how it worked on me. I mean, documentary has the ability to create in you ethical questions. Maybe have nothing to do with that. You're seeing something that is happening somewhere else, that it's not your reality or anything, but somehow it obliges you, to take a position as well, and to just, ask yourself and question yourself and just take a stand. And that's important, I think.
Yes,
it stays with you. It's not like fiction that maybe it's a story and that it touches you or anything. Here you have like facts that you have to take a stand.
Yeah, and it is this kind of film that makes you remember all the time that one has to accept that this kind of thing is possible, is still possible, and whatever we would like to think, we have always to keep this in mind. And as you say, Dimitris, take a stand. I mean, be very attentive in the immediate reality that we are in. Things one has to take also individually a stand toward any kind of horror story and an unacceptable thing that happens, because we as human beings we are allowing sometimes institutions and outside forces to decide for us. And probably that we have to question this. And indeed, this documentary, like other documentaries, are putting us are obliging us to face the reality of our individual responsibility toward crimes and awful and unacceptable things that happen. Now, Magnus, you are also speaking, and your story, the story that you're telling, is also a story happening in a very troublesome context. And I'm very interested. How did you decide to do this documentary, Nelly and Nadine? I mean, what was the spark that created your motivation to do this film?
It all started with that I found an old newsreel from 1945, and this newsreel shows survivors coming from the concentration camps, and they actually arrive in my hometown in Malmö, Sweden, and that's why I was watching this newsreel. And what you see is mainly women. They are taking their first steps in freedom, and you can see it's like they are meeting a camera, and they are in a shock over that they actually are free. And I never intended to do anything about the Second World War or anything that was close to the Holocaust at all. It felt like those stories have already been told, in a way, to me at least. I was not sure about if I had any contribution to do. But then I became so fascinated in this film reel and the faces of this extremely well shot newsreel, because it's like sometimes people ask me if it's like a reenactment or so. Yeah. It looks so good. So I decided to start a journey into the secrets of this film reel, trying to investigate the film reel. And I was asking the, in a way, impossible question: is it possible to find out 75 years later who are these people? What are their names? What are their stories? And I think you, as a documentary filmmaker, you need a challenge that feels almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good starting point. Otherwise, you get too lazy. You don't get the right motivation for things. So that is the journey that I started many years ago. I saw this film reel in 2007, and one of the faces that I actually saw and was so fascinated by in 2007 was the face of one of the two main characters. In my new film, and that is Nadine.
Mm-hmm.
The film is Nelly and Nadine. And Nadine is standing there in this film reel, and she's having this expression in her face, and you don't really know if she's happy about being liberated or I've been thinking for so many years, what is inside her head in this moment? So that is the starting point of my film. And then I realized, after working with finding out who people are in the film reel and actually doing films before, I've been working with two other films that they are also based on the same archive footage.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally, after many years, I stumbled on the full story of Nadine and the woman she met in the camp. And that is a story that is about now as well, because it's about the present. Because if you do a film about something that happened many years ago, it still has to be a film about the present. So that's why the film also starts with a woman walking around in a kitchen in a farm in France. And she's in the moment of confronting family secrets and trying to find out who her grandmother was and who was that woman that the grandmother lived together with. So that's the starting point of the journey that I hopefully people will get so interested in, so they will follow the film, and finally they will meet this big love story.
But if it were to tell in a nutshell what the film is about for you, Magnus, what is the film about? Is it about love? Is it about the healing power of love? Is it about unbelievable things happening? Is it about the Holocaust? What is this film about?
I would say it's not about the Holocaust. That's the backdrop. The Second World War is the backdrop, and when you do your films, they tend to be in very different settings. Last time I was here, I had a film about a famous football player, Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Yeah.
So the setting of that film was like football arenas. And the setting of this film is maybe the war and the Holocaust in a way. That's the backdrop, at least. But every film should be existential. It should be existential. It should be about the big questions in life, who we are and how it is to live a life, and how we deal with traumas, and how we find our way forward in this life. So to me, that's the core of the film. It's those questions. And I would say it's a film about love, of course. It's a film about the mighty power of love. And love is a power that can make you survive even the worst circumstances.
And you, Dimitris, how do you see Magnus' film? Well, how did you? What was your reaction to this film?
Well, I saw it as a very nice love story. you know, and quite powerful because, you know, the circumstances, you know, at that time, it was, you know, it was like a very, very touching, you know, like a relationship, I would say. And characters, you know, were also interesting. You know, I had an interest for the characters, you know, and yeah, it was like it was a very nice film to watch and to follow. You know, it keeps you there. You know, it just you know.
It makes you want to understand and to participate in this kind of very beautiful and healing way of understanding the story, the love story. Now, yes. I'm going, because our time is running, I'm going to ask you a question about time. Dimitris, since we started to work together, I have always noticed, I personally noticed, because I am someone who is rather a quick fixer. let me put it like that. I'm quick. I'm always rushing towards something. I don't know what. I have noticed that what I like very much in the selection of films, one of the things I like very much in the selection of films that you do, is that you really have this capacity to take and to select films that are dealing also with a time dimension, taking the time to go and have, taking the time to look at things, taking the time to feel things, taking the time to meditate about what you see. And I would like to ask both of you, how do you feel that the dimension of time generally in the arts has modified in the last decades? Because for me, one of the most striking things looking today at older films, but also looking at painting, for example, or seeing older performances that are filmed, I have a very strong feeling that the dimension of time changed. It is as if everything has to be done quicker, more spotty, more kind of out of a sort of a more out of a hysterical impulse than out of letting time beat its own rhythm. How do you see this translated in documentary, but also in film in general? If this you feel is something that you think about, time.
Well, I really haven't thought of this way, but I think that you know, time is important. You have to let things grow in you. Time, you know, I mean, whether in selecting films or you know, writing like a text or whatever, you know, I need time to let it grow, you know, in me, and be sure, you know, that, you know, I've seen it the way I have to see it, and that I haven't done it justice, you know, to what I'm doing, you know. So for that you need time, and also for documentaries or fiction films. But let's talk about documentaries. I think you know, a good film, a good documentary needs time. You know, it's the same procedure. It has to grow. You have to, you know, let it grow and be sure, you know, for what you're doing, what you want to show, and what's the best way to do it. I mean, like in Greece, we have a great production of documentaries, and you know, the problem is that they don't give them time. You know, they want to produce a documentary every year. So they find the easy ways, you know, to just approach a theme, you know. And although a lot of times they have very strong themes, you know, they rely on the strength of the theme, and they don't have a perspective. They don't have, you know, an originality in the angle, in the way they see things, you know. On the other hand, a good documentary, you know, takes the time that it needs, you know, to just, you know, do the thing, you know, they want to do. So I think it's important. You need time, you know. Of course, time is relative for, you know, other people do things, you know, faster than others, or they need less time to take decisions or everything, you know. But still, you know, you have to elaborate on things, you know, you have to take your time to, you know.
And do you feel, Dimitris, that this kind of time now, people no longer give it, not only in Greece, but generally, do you feel that there is a tendency to reduce time and to...
Yeah, of course. I mean, I mean, everything is done so fast, you know. I mean, like, you have all this information, you know, you're bombarded with all this information that, you know, it's so much, you don't have time to go after them. So you just check, you know, the headlines, or you check, you know, the first paragraph when you read something, or you just scroll, you know, so you don't give time to things, you know, you just pass through things, you know, so things can become more superficial, you know, you don't take your time to when you have, you know, it's unfortunately that's, you know, like the era we're living, you know, too many information that we cannot process.
Yeah.
And we get tired, you know, we just don't, you know, we just go through them, you know, we just don't go deep in them, you know. So that's our times, I think.
And you, Magnus, what do you think about this?
I agree with Dimitris, of course. I mean, if you're looking into social media, for instance, if you're publishing a story on Instagram, it should be 15 seconds, but it's even better to do a bumper, which is 6 seconds. And when you do the 15-second, you be sure to put the most important information first, because that is how quickly are totally. And so we documentary filmmakers, we are like the warriors of slow storytelling.
Yeah.
Because that's what we have to be, and I hope we can show people that you need time to grow into a story, and you need time to live in the pace of the film. That that we as the filmmakers can hold your hand, and we can walk slowly with you into different rooms, and you can meet different people, and you will get close to people. Because when you are meeting a person in real life, you don't talk to them for 15 seconds and then you're happy. You need to grow a friendship, you need time. And that is what filmmaking is about as well. We are growing a friendship, we're establishing a relationship. It's the film and it's the audience, and we need time to establish that. But it's also about where do you watch the film? Sometimes you really need to watch it in a cinema, and people usually don't do that these days. And then we have the pressure of the people who are paying the money for the documentary, the financing of the documentary. That is television, mainly it's television. They don't want us to make these slow films, 90 minutes of slow storytelling. They want something quicker, and it should be like 52 or 58 minutes if you do a long documentary. And sometimes we think when I'm sitting in editing, we are talking about, okay, let's do this one a little bit quicker, or more American style, and so on. But it never happens. I always slowly I move back to my kind of storytelling, which is the slow pace and the necessity of time in your film.
Great. So I think that this is a very nice final touch for our conversation. Our internet connection was not very good, but I do feel that the flow of the discussion was really moving at a human pace. We took our time to discuss about a certain number of things. Thank you so much, Dimitris and Magnus. And for all of you that look at online now and are in Arad or in Timișoara, you are invited to come and see today and tomorrow the films of fARAD. And I have to say that we keep fARAD at this human dimension also because we believe that some festivals are growing friendships also, as you very nicely put it, Magnus. Thank you, Dimitris and Magnus, and well, see you soon for a next Salon Island 42 in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Corina.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.